What is your favorite false god? Your favorite false god? False gods are, sort of broadly speaking anyway, anything that we spend our energy and our time and our trust in that are in fact not God. They're the things that we place our hope in instead of God, and they get in the way of recognizing God in our midst. And we all have them to a greater or lesser degree, but we all have them. They're things we put our faith in to protect us, to keep us safe, to provide us comfort. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but false gods, or when they become false gods, but false gods ultimately don't satisfy. When push comes to shove, ultimately, they don't protect us. They keep us from hearing and recognizing the voice of God in our midst, of finding that and who is our truth and our way and our life. So what is your favorite false god? One of my favorite stories, and certainly my favorite story for St. Patrick's Day, which is coming up, and perhaps a good story for where we are on this first anniversary of the pandemic, where we are in the world, is by Canadian children's author Robert Munsch. And it's called Waiting for the Thursday Boat. Now, I can't tell the whole story, certainly not in a Munsch sort of way, but I'll give you kind of a condensed version. And if you want to hear it told more Munsch-like, or you want to read it, let me know. It's about a giant named MacIan. Now, MacIan is the best giant in all of Ireland. He is the biggest and the strongest and the kindest. But one day, St. Patrick comes to Ireland, and the two of them, well, they just don't get along. St. Patrick is very busy putting up church bells and chasing all the snakes and elves and giants out of Ireland, and so MacIan decides he's going to go and confront him. And when he finds St. Patrick tells him, I was only doing what God wanted me to. It's not my fault that God likes church bells. And so MacIan decides instead that he's going to confront God. He's going to fight with God. He's going to have it out. I'm going to kick him in the head. I'm going to knock him on the knee. I'll turn him into applesauce. And to get God's attention, he starts throwing all those church bells St. Patrick put up into the sea, until one day St. Patrick says to him, well, now you've done it. God's coming. God's coming on the Thursday boat. Good, says MacIan. And MacIan decides to go and to meet that boat and to fight with God. Now, 4 boats come in that day. 4 boats. And the first boat is very small, and in it is a very small girl, and she has some very small fish. And MacIan quickly decides that she is not God. But she decides to stay because, after all, she's never seen God turned into applesauce before. The next boat has a very rich man on it. But after MacIan confronts him, he realizes he's not God either. And then the third boat comes in with a very powerful man in the boat, but he's not God either. And the fourth boat has a mighty general with a huge army, and MacIan realizes that they weren't God either. And he's sad, and he's upset, because he wanted to fight with God, to have it out, and God didn't come. And the little girl says to him, Mr. MacIan, maybe God doesn't want to fight with you. I mean, after all, you are the best giant in all of Ireland, and even God knows that. Why don't you go back to being nice? And MacIan is relieved, and the two of them share her fish and become the best of friends. Now, the story goes on, and it ends up with St. Patrick and MacIan up in heaven, fighting, bickering, complaining, and blaming each other. And they decide they're going to both go find God to tell on each other. Does this sound familiar to any parents? It sounds familiar to me. And when they find God in a very small house, but it's full to the brim, with snakes and elves and saints and giants, and right in the middle, sitting in a big chair, is the little girl. Because in fact, God came on the Thursday boat. And she loves them both. And she wants the best for both of them, and there's reconciliation, and there are shooting stars. Now, there's a lot more detail in a very Munch storytelling sort of way, but it's this wonderful story. And one of the pieces I love about it, and certainly what I love about the story for today, and where we are right now in this place, this first anniversary of the pandemic, with hope and worry and anxiety and love and passion and all those things swirling all around us, is this idea of false gods. The things that the characters put their faith in, put their hope in, but ultimately aren't fulfilling, and get in the way and keep them from seeing the presence of God in their midst. McKeon is angry, and not unjustly so. But his anger is consuming him, and he doesn't see that God has never abandoned him. St. Patrick is a little, perhaps, too confident in his own rightness, using God as a justification to do the things that he wants. So perhaps his ego is a false god. And then there are the boats, right? People placing their faith in wealth, in power, in military might. And it's easy to get caught up in all of those things, to look for our life and our security and our hope outside of ourselves. But all of these are false gods. They get in the way. They certainly get in the way in the story, and they can get in the way when we place too much of our hope and our faith and our trust in them. And then we can miss God right in front of us in an unexpected person, but right there speaking to us words of wisdom and love and wanting the best for us and from us. We all have false gods. We may not worship them the way the Israelites did with the golden calf, or the way they sort of give a quasi-divine status to the snake on a pole. But the Israelites, if you remember, are lost in the desert. They spend a lot of their time grumbling and fighting and not being able to see God in their midst because they're hurt and they're scared, and the way forward isn't as clear or as concrete as they want. And so they place their hope and their faith in the wrong things. They forget God over and over again, even though God is saving them, loving them, wanting the best for and from them over and over again. They go for the easy comfort, to hold them in their despair when they feel lost. But God is never far away. God never gives up on them. God never abandons them. God is right there in their midst. And before we feel smug, we all have these things that we place our faith in, often for good reasons, initially at least, but that ultimately don't satisfy. They aren't enough. Those three boats, money, power, might, can trip a lot of us up. Not because they're intrinsically bad, but when they become the most important thing, the thing that makes us safe, the thing that's supposed to save us and make us happy, that's when they become false gods. They get in the way. They keep us from seeing how God is always with us. We all have them. What hurts is when we place too much faith in them, when they become too important. And it's then, I think they actually lead to the opposite, to anxiety and to fear, because they keep us from seeing how God is already present. The God who is right in our midst, the one who does love us, the one whom we find our real strength that endures and helps us to live abundantly and compassionately and fully in God's world, where we find our way, our truth, and our life. So, what is your favorite false god? What are you putting too much energy toward that is ultimately not satisfying? So, instead of focusing on that, perhaps as we've turned this corner and we enter year 2 of the pandemic with all of the swirling emotions, hope and worry, and an unclear path forward, it's there, we see it, we hope. Perhaps we need to flip it upside down and take the energy we're spending on these other things and instead turn them toward the people who are sharing their fish with us, showing us kindness and love right in our midst. Who's speaking words of divine wisdom that you need to hear? Words that bring life, that life abundant. Perhaps that's where we need to put our energy right now, and our faith and our hope. Because God is always revealed to have been here all along. Amen.